Okay, today we're going to be looking at the early Middle Ages in Europe, and you can find more information on this in section 7.1 of your textbook. So when we left off at the end of Unit 1, the Roman Empire, at least the western portion, which is highlighted here lightly, had collapsed, had fallen, and really been divided from numerous reasons, one of which being invasions by nomadic German tribes and others. The eastern half is going to continue on, and we're going to talk more about that later in the unit. But today we're really going to be focusing on what happens to Western Europe after the fall of the Western Roman Empire. During this time period, which is roughly 500 to 1000 BC, it's going to be known as the Middle Ages. So from the fall of the Roman Empire on for another 500 to 1000 years. And at this time, the Germanic tribes, many of which had contributed to the fall of the western half of the Roman Empire, began to carve Europe into small kingdoms. And this occurs between 400 and 700. These include the Goths, the Vandals, the Saxons, and the Franks, who we're going to really focus on today. Germanic tribes don't really have cities or written laws. They govern themselves with mostly unwritten customs and kings who are elected by a tribal council. So like I said, they're nomadic as well, and so vastly different than the Romans who had existed in many of these places before. First Frankish king we're going to be looking at is Clovis, who in 486 begins to conquer parts of Gaul, which would later become France. And so we can see that highlighted here on the map in this green. And if you know your European geography, this is a good portion of what is modern-day France. Another thing we have to look at is the advancement of Muslims at this time. In the 600s, Islam is founded in Saudi Arabia in the Middle East and begins to spread across North Africa and the Middle East. It's going to make its way through the Iberian Peninsula, modern-day Spain, and begin pushing up into central Western Europe. With this spread and the conquering of this large Muslim empire, it threatens many of the Germanic tribes. And so in 732, Charles Martel, who's a Frankish statesman and military leader, is able to rally Frankish troops and defeat this advancing Muslim empire at the Battle of Tours. This is important because without this stop here, the Muslim empire could have made its way even further into Western Europe and set or grabbed a foothold of land. With the defeat, the Muslim empire really doesn't go away. Instead, soon after, many of these Muslims and the Christian Europeans would become trading partners and exist somewhat in harmony. Not complete harmony by any means, but somewhat. The next guy we need to look at is actually Charles Martel's grandson. He's Charles the Great, or better known as Charlemagne. He becomes king of the Franks in 768 and is slowly going to build a Frankish empire, uniting what is now considered parts of France, Germany, and Italy. A major win for Charlemagne is actually in 799 when Pope Leo III is being mistreated by Romans in Italy. And he asked Charlemagne for his help in assisting him with the matter. And to show his appreciation, Pope Leo III crowns Charlemagne Emperor of the Romans. The issue with this is that with the fall of the Roman Empire, it's not like the Romans who lived in Italy and other parts of the Western Roman Empire just disappeared. They continued to exist. They just didn't have as much control. The eastern half, which had thrived and continued to thrive, really almost would have absorbed these people as Romans once again. By Pope Leo III crowning Charlemagne Emperor of the Romans, what it does is effectively splits the empire again now and this upsets the eastern half, which is, you could say, whose capital city is in Constantinople. And so now we effectively have a split Roman Empire again, the eastern half, and now this new empire under Charlemagne. And so if we look at a map of Gaul or modern-day France, we see highlighted here and outlined in the dark green is the Frankish territory in 481, and then slowly the conquering of land. And the parts attributed to Charlemagne we can see here in the light colors right inside the checkered red borders. So a decent amount of land conquered by Charlemagne. Upon his death in 814, we see now here highlighted in green parts of modern-day Spain, France, Germany, the Belgiums, the Netherlands, and Italy have come under Frankish control. And then also over here we see that Eastern Roman Empire, which actually has severely lost much of its influence in the region. Well, as with many great leaders, after their death, the empires they once ruled often do not last. And it's the same for Charlemagne's empire. And much like the Western Roman Empire, it suffers from an invasion, a series of invasions over the course of a few hundred years. From the north, highlighted here in orange, are invasions by the Scandinavian Vikings into Western Europe. From Central Europe, there's a nomadic Hungarian tribe known as the Magyars who kind of push into Western Europe. And then also, once again, we see Muslim invasions, much of which by the sea up through the Italian peninsula and into parts of modern-day France. So this sets up the early Middle Ages. We're going to look at what comes from these invasions and who's able to fill this void that's left after the death of Charlemagne and the slow breaking up of his empire later on in the unit, along with this little empire over here, the Byzantine Empire, which happens to lie in the same spot as the Eastern Roman Empire.